Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Sunset Live on day 27 of Ramadan. We are approaching the 28th night of this blessed month. And inshallah, for today, we're going to do something maybe a little bit different than usual. I'm going to actually just wait a moment and try and see if this live shows up so I can share it in our Canada Muslims group. So if you'll please give me a moment or two, inshallah. Just waiting for that share. But while we're waiting for that, I think I think many of us may have had a wonderful experience, inshallah, with our 27th night of Ramadan. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to finish strong today. The 27th night is kind of the peak, but it's not over yet. So in a moment we will discuss exactly what's left from our Ramadan. So give me a moment, please. There we go. Okay, so Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So we are, as I mentioned, in the 27th day of Ramadan. The 28th night is approaching us. And this is actually potentially our second last night of the month of Ramadan. The 28th night, the 29th night will be tomorrow. And then if Eid is on Sunday, then that will be it for Taraweeh. If Eid is on Monday, then we'll have one last day of Taraweeh, or one last night of Taraweeh on the Saturday night, and then we'll complete our fasting on Sunday, and then Monday will be Eid. So we're not sure exactly which one it will be quite yet. Inshallah, please always stay posted with the masjid for announcements as to whether Eid will be on our Sunday or it will be on the Monday. And of course, the masjid will always communicate, in a timely fashion. MashaAllah, there's a great committee of our imams that come together and make sure that as a community in Ottawa, for the most part, we have one Eid. We're not separating between families or between communities based on Eid. So we are actually in the last Sunset Live, right? We usually have Sunset Lives Sunday through Thursday, and today is Thursday. And so this is it. This is our last Sunset Live of the month of Ramadan. And during the short few minutes that we have together, I wanted to highlight a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So normally during Sunset Live, what we do is we take some of the verses that we're going to recite in Taraweeh, and we discuss them and what they mean. And I want to just maybe stray from that a little bit, and I want to talk about this beautiful hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so we'll read it all first, and then I want to kind of go one by one about what our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us. And he starts, or he says sallallahu alaihi wasallam, المؤمن الذي يقرأ القرآن ويعمل به كمثل الأترجة طعمها طيب وريحها طيب والمؤمن الذي لا يقرأ القرآن ويعمل به كالتمرة طعمها طيب ولا ريح لها ومثل المنافق الذي يقرأ القرآن كالريحانة ريحها طيب وطعمها مر ومثل المنافق الذي يقرأ القرآن كالحنظلة ومثل المنافق الذي لا يقرأ القرآن كالحنظلة طعمها مر أو خبيث أو ريحها مر. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that the example of the believer that recites the Quran and acts upon it is like a citrus fruit whose smell is pleasant and its taste is pleasant. And the example of the believer that doesn't read the Quran but still tries to act, right? Still tries to act in accordance with what is in that book. That is like a sweet basil, is like a date, excuse me, is like a date. A date has no smell, but when you taste it, it is still sweet. And the example of the munafiq, the hypocrite, that reads the Quran, but of course doesn't act upon it, is like a sweet basil, which smells good, but when you taste it, it's bitter. And the example of the hypocrite that does not recite the Quran is like a colocynth. I don't know what a colocynth is, but which tastes bitter and has a bad smell. So the Prophet ﷺ is placing us, all of us, in perhaps four categories, right? The first being the one that reads the Quran and acts upon it. Sometimes as believers, we stray too much to one side. And maybe perhaps, if anyone would like to leave a comment about maybe during Ramadan, sometimes we stray to one side of this, where perhaps we focus so much on reading the Quran and we forget about acting upon it, right? And then sometimes we're satisfied, we say, oh yeah, I don't need to read the Quran as long as I act upon it, right? And so maybe the question there is, how can I act upon something that I don't actually know, right? If I haven't read it or memorized it, how do I actually know what's in it for me to act upon it? So, if anyone would like to leave a comment, for me, perhaps during Ramadan, I always find myself, really, really locking in on the reading. And that's good. Obviously, during the month of Ramadan, we're encouraged to read the Quran, and there's so much reward for it, and we get 10 hasanat outside of Ramadan for every letter we read. And during Ramadan, it's multiplied even more. But we have to remember, right, that we are a nation of balance. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to have both, right? To read and to act. And if you are like this, the Prophet ﷺ is basically telling us our inner state will be good, right? The taste of the citrus fruit is sweet, but also the smell, it benefits those around. People don't need to get to know us. They don't need to, have a deep relationship with us to benefit from us. Perhaps there are those in the community we don't know them very well. Maybe we've only seen them from afar. Maybe we just, say salam to them after prayer, but we know there's goodness in them. We can tell that there's some goodness that is we want to unlock, that is just sitting inside them, that perhaps they have a good relationship with Allah. They're a person of deen. They're a person of faith, and all this, and we haven't even gotten to know their true inner self. It is just the smell, almost, that not the literal smell, of course, but just almost in passing, we can tell that there's goodness in them. And this is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is the one who reads the Quran and acts upon it. And so during this month of Ramadan, right, perhaps we've increased our recitation of the Quran. Every night we've listened to the Quran being recited in Taraweeh. When else? What other, people, what other time, any circumstance are people going to be filling the masajid on a work night like they were last night to listen to the Quran being read and to stand and to, if you think about it from an outsider perspective, to literally stand and not move and, from the outsider perspective, almost do nothing, right? Except for listen to these words. In what other circumstance do you have this happening? And this is only in the month of Ramadan, where we see people coming in dozens and hundreds and thousands to the masajid on a work night. Perhaps they work early, perhaps some got off of a late shift, and they're going to listen to the Quran, this beautiful book of Allah. And don't leave the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Don't close the book on Saturday or Sunday and say, okay, see you next year. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, if we want to be someone who benefits others, who others can just by from afar, they can take goodness from us and they can see how pleasant we are, then it takes a relationship with the Quran, one of reading, one of learning, and one of acting. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is also telling us that the believer who doesn't read, but they still do their best to act on the Quran, they still have goodness in them, right? Perhaps you can't smell the dates. You can't, you don't give someone a date and they don't smell it, but when you eat it, it's sweet and it's nice, especially when we break our fast, right? That first piece of food that we have is amazing. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying, you know what, even if you don't read the Quran, perhaps we find it tough, perhaps I can't read the Arabic language. Perhaps, I'm so busy, and, there's times when I'm not able to have, a direct reading relationship with the Quran. Everyone has their circumstance. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying, as long as we still try and act on it, there will be goodness inside of us. Right? Perhaps that goodness won't manifest as widely as it would if we were those who read the Quran as well. But inside, right? Inside of us, that taste of the date, you don't get to know that taste until you bite into it, until you are right up close with it. Only then does the benefit become apparent. But the benefit is still there. So don't become discouraged and think that, oh my goodness, if I don't read the same way I read during Ramadan, just a day, 2 ajza a day, 3 ajza a day, if I don't do all of this outside of Ramadan, there's nothing for me. No, the Prophet ﷺ is giving us that the good news that the one who still tries to act upon it, they are one who still has goodness inside them. And perhaps we need to, dig a little deeper for it, but there's still a goodness, right? We're still trying our best to follow our Prophet ﷺ and follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down in the Quran. And there is still positive in that. So we always need to give ourselves credit for the positive that we do. And obviously we strive to be better, but we do not prevent ourselves from giving ourselves credit for that which we have achieved and that which we are trying to do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the next part, Allah subhanahu or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, really the gist of the next part of the hadith is that substance matters over form, right? Maybe perhaps you've heard this saying in the past that form versus substance, right? The way something looks versus the way something is on the inside. And the Prophet ﷺ is telling us what really matters is what's on the inside, because he says there will be a munafiq, a hypocrite, someone who conceals what's really in their heart. They're outwardly a believer, but on the inside they don't really have belief. There will be someone like this who will read the Quran. These people will still read the Quran, but obviously, they won't act on it the way they won't act on it the way the believer does, right? But they might still read the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying that this is like some like a basil plant that has a good smell. So perhaps others congratulate you, or congratulate this person on, wow, oh my goodness, what a beautiful recitation voice you have in Taraweeh. Or, oh wow, mashallah, your sujood was so long. They see the outward manifestations of this, right? The smell of the fruit. They're able to engage with the outward manifestation of this. But the Prophet ﷺ says the taste is bitter. That this person, despite this outward appearance, that there's goodness and khair in them, really on the inside, there's nothing. The outer smell does not matter in this case. What matters is the inner. That there can be a person who seems like they have it all together, but on the inside, they are not one who has that khair inside them. And this is the one who doesn't recite the Quran, and of course does not act upon it. Who has this is the one who recites the Quran, but is a hypocrite. In their heart, they don't have belief. So we shouldn't be too amazed, right? We shouldn't be too mesmerized by anybody, to be honest. Our belief is in Allah, and our following is of the Prophet ﷺ, and we don't follow any person or any figure or anybody else the way we follow our Prophet ﷺ. We learn from, and we take guidance from, and we engage with our leaders in our community and our imams, and in our case, our beloved Imam Sikandar, of course, right? But we never put our faith in a person. Our faith is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our following is in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because there could be a person, as our Prophet describes, who has a good smell, in other words, a good outward appearance, but inside they're bitter, inside they're rotten. And the final one Prophet ﷺ says, the example of the hypocrite who does not recite the Quran. So they have no belief in their hearts. Perhaps they proclaim their belief, but they don't even take the time to read the Quran. No acting upon it, no reading, nothing. This is like a fruit that is, not only does it have a bad smell, but it tastes bitter as well. Nobody wants to be around it. Nobody wants to be around this fruit. Nobody wants to engage with it at a deeper level. And on the inside, there's nothing. It's all badness everywhere. And so, for those joining us late, we'll read through this hadith one more time, right? The Prophet ﷺ tells us that the believer who recites the Quran and acts upon it is like the citrus fruit. It's one whose taste is nice and its smell is pleasant as well. In the example of the believer who doesn't recite the Quran, but they still try and act upon it, this is like a date. The date, it doesn't really have a smell to it, but it tastes sweet. And the example of the hypocrite who recites the Quran, so the hypocrites can recite the Quran, but the Prophet ﷺ doesn't say that they don't act upon it, but of course the hypocrite is not going to act upon it. This is like the sweet basil, which has a good smell, but its taste is bitter. And finally, the example of the hypocrite who does not recite the Quran, this is like the hamdara. It has a bitter smell and it has a bitter taste. So we ask Allah that He makes us from those who read the Quran, recite the Quran, and we act upon it. That after this month of Ramadan, right, this month of Quran, and we listen to it and we read it and we engage with it, and it's become such a big part of our lives. SubhanAllah, yesterday walking into the masjid after Taraweeh, right, in the depths of night, and there's just people coming and coming and coming, and all you hear is the recitation of the Quran, right? And it's SubhanAllah, the amazing feeling that there are people sacrificing sleep, and they're probably going to be sleeping, through the day during work today, and all of this for this book of Allah. This is a blessing that Allah has blessed us with this book. That Allah has made us people who have the humility and have been given the guidance in order to, follow this book and read it. So, we have our fast is breaking in 2 minutes. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, we thank you for giving us the guidance of the Quran. We thank you, oh Allah, for making us from the ummah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Oh Allah, you could have made us from any ummah, from any nation at any time, and you chose, oh Allah, to honor us with making us from the people of the Quran and from the nation of your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We ask you that you send your praise and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a walking Quran, and we ask that you make us those who walk as if we are walking Quran as well. We ask you, oh Allah, that outside of this month of Ramadan, that even when the Quran is not being recited in the depths of the night in the masajid, that we still take time to recite and to read and to engage with this Quran in our own homes. We ask, oh Allah, that you make our homes places where this Quran is recited frequently, and that the Quran holds a special place in our hearts, that even after this month, if we go too long without if we go too long without reading it, that our hearts feel like we're missing something. We ask you, oh Allah, to make us those who read and memorize, and on the Day of Judgment, that we are from those who read and we rise the ranks of paradise with every letter that we recite. We ask you, oh Allah, to make our hearts attached to this book, to give us, oh Allah, the success to read it and memorize it and teach our children and our communities from this book. We ask you, oh Allah, that all of those who have been reciting this book, your Quran, throughout this month, that you reward them for every single letter that they have recited. Every single letter, that you make it a means of 10 and more multiples of deeds for all of us that have taken time to read your book. We ask you, oh Allah, that you allow us to complete this Quran tomorrow in our Taraweeh, that you allow us to read the final verses to allow us to complete our recitation of the Quran. We ask you, Allah, to allow us to reach that time and to complete that completion. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. So we will see you inshallah for Taraweeh tonight, and of course there's no Sunset Live tomorrow, but we will see you inshallah for our completion of the Quran. That will be tomorrow night, Friday night. So please, join us with your families. It will be, a time to enjoy the completion of the Quran, to make dua for ourselves, for our brothers and sisters around the world, and for us to celebrate this achievement that we have gone from the beginning of this beautiful book all the way to its completion. So we'll see you there inshallah. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم.